Hi everyone, Mr. East here again. I'm going to take you through today's lesson. Let's start by looking at the previous lesson's practice activity. Now you were asked to look at both of these pairs of calculations and use the stem sentences to describe what is happening. So the first one, 16 subtract 14 is equal to 2, and then 18 subtract 14 is equal to 4. Does our minuend increase or decrease? It increases, doesn't it? So let's use the sentence stem on the left. I've added 2 to the minuend and kept the subtrahend the same, so I must add 2 to the difference. Hope you said that one with me. Make sure you say the second one with me. So let's think about it first. 172 subtract 138 is equal to 34. And then 152 subtract 138 is equal to 14. So does my minuend increase or decrease? It decreases this time, so we need to use the sentence stem on the right. I've subtracted, what's happened? Let's look at the digits. The 1 in the hundreds column has stayed the same. The tens digit has decreased from 7 to 5, and the ones digit has stayed the same. So it's decreased. How much does it decrease by? By 2 tens, so that's 20. So let's say this together. I've subtracted 20 from the minuend and kept the subtrahend the same, so I must subtract 20 from the difference. Did you get that? I'm sure you did. Okay, so let's think about a math story, so a context that we can use to describe what's happening. And I suggested to think about children in a class. So for the first pair of calculations, let's think about children. In a class, you will have boys and girls. So maybe the sentence could be about this. It could be maybe there were 16 boys in the class, there were 14 girls in the class, so the difference would be 2. And then maybe 2 more boys joined the class, the number of girls stayed the same, so the difference would also increase by 2. Now let's look at the next one. We've got 172 subtract 138 is 34, and I suggested a length of ribbon. So if we're finding the difference, that would mean maybe we have 2 different pieces of ribbon, maybe 2 different colors. And if it's decreasing, if the minuend is decreasing, then maybe the length of ribbon would decrease in size. One of them would become smaller, the other one would stay the same size. So let's look at that. I've written this problem as a word problem. So here is the word problem I have written. A blue ribbon was 1 meter 72 centimeters long, and a red ribbon was 1 meter 38 centimeters long. So the blue ribbon was 34 centimeters longer than the red ribbon. We knew all of that information from the calculation that we were given. Then the blue ribbon was cut down to 1 meter 52 centimeters. How much longer than the red ribbon is the blue ribbon now? That's my word problem. Let me show you that as a representation. So we have our blue ribbon is 1 meter 72 centimeters. We had our red ribbon was 1 meter 38 centimeters. Where are we going to put this bit of information? The blue ribbon was 34 centimeters longer than the red ribbon. It's a little bit like our bar chart in the previous lesson. It's going to be in the space between the end of the red bar and the end of the blue bar. It's going to go in this section, and we're told it's 34 centimeters long. Now I'm going to show you the calculation you were given. Can you notice something slightly different? The calculation says 172, but I've written 1 meter 72. Am I wrong? Some of you might be saying that they're equivalent to each other. 172 centimeters is the same as 1 meter 72. I've just chosen to represent it slightly differently. It's the same because in a meter there's 100 centimeters. The next thing we're told is then the blue ribbon was cut down to 1 meter 52. So watch what happens to my blue ribbon. It becomes smaller, and we now know it's 1 meter and 52 centimeters long. Does our difference stay the same? Is it still 34 centimeters? Look on our representation. 34 centimeters, and the space that it shows on our representation was larger than it is now. So because we've decreased the minuend, we also have to decrease the difference. So we need to show what that is. We know it's this smaller amount, and can you remember what it was? Can you remember the previous slide? If you can't, let's see if we can work it out. Let's look at our minuends again. 172 in the first calculation, 152 in the second calculation. It's decreased by 20. The subtrahend has stayed the same, so our difference needs to decrease by 20, so it's 14 centimeters. Let's look at that in one more way. Let's look at it vertically like we did before. There's our first calculation. We've just said that the minuend decreased by 20. The subtrahend stayed the same, so that means our difference must also decrease by 20. And there was the completed calculation that you were given in the practice activity. So in today's lesson, we are still using the same generalization. If the minuend is changed by an amount and the subtrahend is kept the same, the difference changes by the same amount. Here's the first calculation. Luckily, there's nothing for us to solve because we're given the complete calculation. 62,865 subtract 41,294 is equal to 21,571. Now we're going to use that calculation to help us solve a different calculation. In this calculation, do we know the minuend? Yeah, it's 63,865. Do we know the subtrahend? Yep, I can see that. We don't know the difference. So let's think about how the minuend or the subtrahend or the difference changes. Does the subtrahend change? No, the subtrahend we can see is 41,294 in both calculations. The minuend, however, does change. Let's look at the digits in each of our place value columns to help us work out what it's changed by. Let's start with the ones. We have the digit 5 in both columns, that hasn't changed. What about our tens? We have the digit 6 in both columns. What about the hundreds? We got the digit 8 in both columns. What about the thousands? Oh, I can notice a change. It's changed from the digit 2 in the thousands column to the digit 3. So it's increased by 1,000. What about our 10,000 column? That's the same as well. So that means our minuend has increased by 1,000. We said our subtrahend has stayed the same. So what will happen to our difference? It will change by the same amount. I can see that in our generalization. So that will also increase by 1,000. So let's think. Will our ones column change? No, that will stay as a 1. Our tens, our hundreds, they'll both stay the same. Our thousands column will increase by 1,000. So the digit 1 will become the digit 2. So our difference is 22,571. Okay, so now we have another calculation. Now I've kept both the calculations that we know on there because actually we can use either for our new calculation. Let's think what's changed. We've got 60,865 subtract 41,294. First thing I notice is the subtrahend is the same again. That must mean the minuend has changed if there's a different difference. Okay, the minuend has changed. Let's look at the digits again. The ones digit is the same. The tens digit is the same. The hundreds digit is the same. The thousands digit is this. No, it's not the same. It's changed. We'd had the digit 2 in the thousands column. We now have 0. So has the minuend increased or decreased? This time it's decreased. We know that because the 10,000 column is also the same. So it's decreased by 2,000. So what's going to happen to our difference? That needs to also decrease by 2,000. Let's think carefully about that. There's the digit 1 in the thousands column for our difference at the moment. So instead, I'm going to think about there's 21 thousands. The hundreds, tens, or ones is going to stay the same. That's still going to be 571. But what's 21,000 subtract 2,000? 21 subtract 2 is 19. So if we subtract 2,000, our difference will become 19,571. Okay, so I've kept those 3 calculations now on the screen. Now we've got a 4th calculation to solve. Again, what do you notice straight away? Oh, this time there's a different unknown. This time we don't know our minuend. We're told our subtrahend, and we can see that stayed the same. We're told our difference has changed. Now you could use any of the other differences to help us, but the one I can see that the most things are similar, again, is our top calculation, the bold calculation. I can see 21,571, and in our new calculation to solve, I've got 31,571. Our hundreds, tens, and ones have stayed the same. Our thousands column is stayed the same. Our 10,000 column has changed. It's increased by 1. So therefore we've added 10,000 to our difference. So how's that going to affect our subtrahend? It's not, is it? We can see that's the same. What about our minuend? The minuend is going to change as well. It's going to change by the same amount. That's from our generalization. So what is 62,865? Add 10,000. The digit in the 10,000 column is 6. That's going to increase by 1. So it's going to be 72,865. Final calculation for us to think about. All 4 are there to see if they can help us. Let's see what's the same, what's different. Again, we've got a minuend that we don't know. The subtrahend stayed the same. The difference has changed. I could use any of them. Let's think about the calculation we've just done. The 10,000 columns increased by 1. The thousands is the same. The hundreds is the same. The tens is the same. The ones changed. So 2 columns have changed. I think I can see how they've both changed, but I wonder if there are fewer changes in any of the other differences. Can you see in the bold difference? 21,571, and now we've got 21,570. What's the difference between those two differences? The ones column has changed. The ones column has decreased by 1. So what's going to happen to our minuend? That also has to decrease by 1. So what is 1 less than 5 in our ones column? It would be 4. So our minuend would be 62,864. Okay, so another calculation with another unknown. We have our first calculation in bold, 23.18 subtract 0.82 is equal to 22.36. Again, thinking about what stayed the same and what has changed for our calculation with the unknown. The minuend, I can see that's changed. The subtrahend hasn't changed, and we need to work out the difference. So let's think about how much our minuend has changed by. Let's look at our hundredths column. That's 8, that stayed the same. Our tenths column has stayed the same. Our tens and our ones columns have changed. So we can just think about 23 and 46. It's increased. How much has it increased by? Our ones column has increased by 3. Our tens column has increased by 2. So that would mean it's increased by 23. So we know by now that means we have to increase our difference by the same amount. So 22.36, if we increase that by 23, our hundredths and our tenths column will stay the same. Our tens column will become 2 greater because we're adding 2 more 1/10s, and our ones column will increase by 3 because we're adding on 3 more ones. So it will be 45.36. Okay, now we know our generalization. We got good at that. And we know that in a sequence of calculations that contain an unknown, we can use previous known values to help us work out the unknowns. I think you can have a good go at this. So I want you to pause the video and see if you can work out the 3 unknowns, not just by using a written method, but by thinking about our generalization of if I change the minuend by an amount, and if the subtrahend stays the same, then we will change our difference by the same amount. So have a go at that for me. So let's start with our first calculation. We've got 23.28 subtract 0.82 is equal to something. We could use our first calculation that we know all the values for, or our second one. My choice would be using the first calculation. Let's look at the minuend. Let's start at our hundredths column. 8 hundredths has stayed the same. 1/10 has changed to be 2/10. and then my 1s and my 10s have stayed the same with the number 23. That means I know that my minuend has increased by 1/10, so my difference needs to increase by 1/10. That will be 22.46. Let's look at my next one. Okay, 123.58, 0.82. Okay, our subtrahend stayed the same. What about our minuend? More than one thing's changed. So I've got some different choices. I could use the calculation I've just done, because I can through my 10s and my 1s are the same, and the 10s and 1s are the same here. It's increased by 100. So does that mean my difference increases by 100? No? Did someone say no? What else has changed? The tenths has also changed. It's increased from 2/10 to 5/10. So it's increased by 103/10. So that would be 100.3. So what's 100.3 more than 22.46? Let's think. Our 100th digit will stay the same as 6. My 10th digit will increase from 4 to 7. My 1s will stay the same. My 10s will stay the same. My 100s will increase by 1. So 122.67. Some of you might have used this first calculation. That's fine as well. Let's think about what's changed. Our 100th digit hasn't changed. Our 10th digit has increased by 4/10. Our 10s and our 1s have stayed the same, and our hundreds column has increased by 100. So that would mean my difference would increase by 100.4, and yet we've got 1 in our hundreds column, and our 10th digit is increased from 3 to 7. So we can use either of those calculations to help us. Okay, let's think about this one. 3.18 subtract 0.82. Which calculation do we want to go for? Did you go for the top calculation? Maybe some hands up at home. The second calculation? Probably not. Quite a lot has changed there. This calculation? Possibly. This calculation? Maybe. Quite a lot has changed. I think, again, actually, our top calculation is the most useful. Let's think about what stayed the same in our minuend and what's changed. My tenths and hundredths have stayed the same because we've got 18 hundredths here. Let's look at our 10s and 1s. We've gone from 23. Oh, there's no 10s here, just 3. So our 10s digit has decreased from 2 to 0 to not being there. That means it's decreased by 2 10s, which is 20. That means our difference needs to decrease by 2 10s. So that means the difference would be 2.36. Again, you could have used the second, third or fourth calculations to help you. That would mean the minuend difference would change by a different amount to what we just said, but as long as they both change by the same amount, you should still get the right solution. Okay, so your independent work is still using that same generalization. Let's read it one more time together. Come on with me. If the minuend is changed by an amount and the subtrahend is kept the same, the difference changes by the same amount. You've got one known calculation at the top, which is 52.13 subtract 3.76 is equal to 48.37. Think about what's changed and what stayed the same. And then think about in the other calculations, are you going to work from the bold calculation, or are you going to work from one of the ones you've just worked out? And then your final challenge, which is shown in the red box. Can you see at the bottom here, we've got 3 unknowns. Now this doesn't mean just make up your own calculation. I want you to see if you can continue the pattern, continue the sequence of calculations. Think about, in all of them, is there anything that stayed the same? And then think about, maybe you can choose what you'll change the other 2 things by. So it's not just a totally free question, there's some form of sequence. So think about our generalization and what you know needs to stay the same. Good luck, and we'll go through those in the next lesson.